Hello. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Siddharth did a good job of introducing the panel, so we'll just jump straight into it. A little context first. We have a very interesting topic, of course, moment marketing. It's quite the buzzword. And it's almost become imperative for brands today, of course, to be topical, reactive. If you don't do it, there's a problem. And so, to begin with, we know that, of course, it's not all in the moment. There's a lot of planning that goes into creating a machinery that can react in real time and delight and engage users. So I'd like to just start with your opening thoughts on what you think the role of moment marketing is today in brand building. So we'll just take the whole panel, just opening thoughts. We'll start with Dilen, perhaps.
Okay. I think, and we were talking a little bit about this before. Um, Three thoughts here. Number one, I think moment marketing is not new. Even if you keep aside Amul, who were the original purveyors of this art, um, and look at all the work that happened around festive occasions, at different occasions that marketeers have been using all the time. Those are examples of
Yeah.
moment marketing. So moment marketing has been part of our toolkit for a long period of time. The second thing is what's changed now is the fact that the proliferation of social media allows one to partake in a lot more moments. So we actually did a study, and just in the past 90 days, the kind of fluid moments that brands activated. And we were able to track about 90 of those. That's one moment per 3 day that that either one brand or multiple brands had activated upon. Now, if you start putting that in perspective, that's 120 different discrete moments that a brand or multiple brands could operate just from a fluid moment standpoint. I'm not talking about things like New Year's and Diwali or whatever. I'm talking about you two coming to India, etc. So the just the proliferation of social media has allowed us to attract talk about one of those moments. And the third thing is that as with everything in the marketer's toolkit, this is one of those areas which will continue to evolve. I don't think anybody has a definitive answer on what is the right or the wrong way to do it. Everybody has a theory, and as more and more people do it, as we've had a chance to look at other people and how they've done it or done it ourselves, we will become smarter and better at leveraging this, tool. So that's kind of where my like
Srini,
two
of
cents on
course,
this.
sorry, Burger King, very active in the space. We was talking about Megxit earlier today. Your thoughts, please.
I think a few things here, right? Firstly, I think interesting times that we all live in, right? There's more amount of content that's being produced than that can be consumed, right? If you just put it in a maths equation, at any point of time, most of us don't need to go to a job. We can just sit at home and just try soaking in all the content that's available, right? There's more amount of content that you could take in than that's required. And of course, very low attention spans, need for clarity, need for attention, and there's a day job to deal with. Consumer lives are super busy, right? The way I look at social media and movement marketing is the fact that where you could hit the sweet spot in terms of relevance, it's one of the best optimal options that are there in a marketing toolkit, right? Just for nuance, I think an year back or something back, a year and a half back, uh, there's a three-word tweet which happens to be the most loud brand tweet ever, if I understand right, which is basically Burger King UK responding to Kanye West saying explains a lot, right? Do look it up, right? It's just 3 words. It's got about 1 million tweets plus, right? You can't hit that kind of brand love, affinity, and relevance in a spur of movement, right? So I think it's a fantastic tool that one have. But all I would say, and we'll talk more, is it's not as spontaneous as brands and marketeers make it out to be, guys. It's a bit of a planned spontaneity. We'll talk more about it. So yeah, so the initial thoughts from my end, Delmas.
So, Sudhanshu, of course, the Oreo moment, classic case, 2013, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that kind of, although there was a lot happening before that also, that kind of opened the floodgates for moment marketing and it showed the world how it could be done. Your thoughts?
So I'll kind of build on what Dilen and Srini said. I think moment marketing has been happening for quite some time, and what Srini pointed out, content. And there is an explosion amount of content which is being thrown out at the consumer. So I think what's changing is, the challenge which we marketeers today are facing. It's becoming more and more difficult for us to draw attention of consumer on our conventional marketing advertising. Today there used to be a time when consumer used to love to watch our advertisement. It was like an entertainment. It's not the case anymore. It's becoming more of a blind spot, and that's where our marketing spend effectiveness is going down. And we are doing a lot of things to improve on that. How do you handle that channel? Moment marketing definitely is one of the opportunities which brands are learning and deploying to get better at this job. I think the way we look at moment marketing, yeah, there are three parts to it. First, which Dilen spoke about, the whole fluid moment, which is about tapping into the topical, trends which are emerging and being able to put your point of view and become part of the conversation, which Amul has been doing pretty well. The second is really about, advanced planning, thinking about what moments you can tap into, to bring your brand positioning to life, to strengthen your brand promise in consumer space. And that's where brands are now looking at calendarizing their annual calendar. So, for example, in Mondelez, there's some great examples. I mean, we have been doing it quite effectively. So, Silk, taps into Valentine beautifully. It has become to emerge as a brand which is owning that space very well. Bonvita, for example, owns the exam moment with our Beyond Marks campaign. And similarly, Oreo, Super Bowl. It wasn't a spontaneous thing. It was something which, there was the inside stories, there was a 15-member team which was dedicated war room. And it was all planned. It was, so it's something, so the second part is where brands are thinking consciously, how do you think about moments which can be meaningful for the consumers and meaningful for the brand, and how do you build for that? And the third piece, which again is very, very important and effective, how do you adapt your standard comms to what we call micro moments, which now digital offers? So the same message now needs to be crafted differently. So for example, an Oreo recipe, if we need to communicate to a mom on a weekend versus to a millennial who's wanting to watch a football match on a weekday, the same message needs to be crafted very, very differently, and it improves your ROI. So the way we see, I mean, there are three ways moment marketing is getting deployed, and we are experimenting, we are learning our way through it. But yeah, it's an important aspect. How do you stay relevant with the consumer? So it's very, very important to build muscle on this space.
Navonil, of course, agency side, what's your perspective?
Yeah, that's a good place to start, agency side. If this is about moment marketing, I hope I'll be given a moment before I answer. I have something in my mind, First of all, I want to reiterate the fact that I represent Rediffusion. It's an advertising agency, it's a communications agency, and it's something which we call India's largest independent agency. And why do we say that? Because when the ad world zigs and usually gets latched on to a network or the other, we have the guts and the gumption to go alone and live the Make in India mantra. But more than that, what separates us is our credo. And our credo is creative to the power of technology. And if we believe that if we can do creative to the power of technology, you get 3 C's in return, which is conversion, connection, and conversation. Yeah? But hey, why am I talking about Rediffusion right now? Any idea, guys? Moment marketing. I was actually doing moment marketing. I got my moment, my audience, right message, right TG, right timing, right audience, and I hope I did it right. Yeah? So anyway, so that's what moment marketing to me is all about. The point to me is not about social media. It to me is a media neutral thing. Anything that you do to leverage what's going on in the life, it's going on around you, to a marketing purpose or end, that's moment marketing to me. And you can do that as close to real time as possible. That's moment marketing to me. I'll give you just one example, one of my favorite examples, my favorite brand also. We are talking about moment marketing today in 2020. This was the 2004 Olympics. Liu Xiang, for those who have not heard, was a Chinese athlete. 110-meter hurdles race. No Asian has ever won the short distance race. Asians are not built to win a short distance race. And he was competing. He at least made the cut. That was good enough. You know what Nike had done for that? Nike had prepared 4 pieces of ad for that, for the day of the day of the event. TV ads. I'm not talking about social media posts. One, if Louis Yang won nothing. Second, if Louis Yang won bronze, if he won silver, and if he won gold. That's what moment marketing is all about. It's all about anticipation, all about planning. Again, it's a new media. Those things are made easier with technology today, but it's been always been there, and that's what it's all about. Anticipation and the and to plan what will happen. Sometimes even be ready for things that is unplanned.
All eventualities. Yeah. Udit, what about you? Do you have an opening like
Sure.
our agency man here?
Yeah, no, sure. I think moment marketing is very imperative. I think it's imperative to any marketing plan in today's world. I see a couple of reasons for it. One, I think one of the panelists mentioned the age of interruption marketing is over. You cannot no longer interrupt consumers on what they're doing, make them see your ad, and then land your brand or product idea. So you need to go away from the interrupt to attention marketing, which is where moment marketing for me really sits in very well. The second thing is brands today need to become a part of popular culture. And moment marketing is a very essential part. If you want to embed your brand in culture, become part of the conversation, you have to partake, have to participate in the conversations that are happening. Lastly, I think it's very important. Brands of the future are building communities around them. I think, again, being relevant in the lives of your community, using the opportunity to create engagement, I think is another reason why I think moment marketing is very critical in today's age. I'll just give you an example of how moment marketing in our company is going beyond social media. So we've just purchased 500 screens, which we are putting up in bars and clubs. So I work for Budweiser, putting them in bars and clubs across the country. And we've identified a culture calendar of sorts where we want to moment market, right, into these screens, right? So we're going beyond social media. Like, how do we talk to our consumers in the moment, in the bars and clubs, in the occasions that are relevant to them, right? So.
That was an interesting point, of course, you mentioned of latching onto culture. I mean, culture jacking is another term used for it. Dilen, I'm going to come back to what you mentioned earlier about the number of moments that have increased exponentially, of course. How do you go about choosing and picking the right moments? I mean, what goes into that?
Yeah,
I mean, because it's a tricky territory.
Yeah.
You don't want to get into something and then, you have it backfire on you.
Yeah, I think there are few things which are a clear no-no from a moment point of view. Things which are related to religion or politics, you kind of want to stay away
Of course.
So, and you can get into trouble even if it's tangentially around those areas. I think the other lens that we kind of always looked at is relevance. Relevant to the brand narrative and relevant to the consumer's interests. Those are two important kind of lenses that you need to look at. You need not say something about everything that's been spoken about.
Yeah. But is there a need to sort of jump into every conversation? Do you find
that's the point I'm trying to make. I think the effectiveness will go down dramatically, and we've seen that across. Doritos, for example, is much more credible when it's talking about English content, English language content, than it is about other kinds of content. And we've seen a definite difference between the engagement rates when we have spoken about content, which is closer to, and not just every kind of English content that our consumers have interest in and what they would naturally associate with Doritos. And we've seen a difference in consumer engagement between those two kind of stuff. So, for example, if there was a post which went out about the release of Joker, would have a very different reaction versus a post that went out on, I don't know, Dunkirk. So the kind of engagement, those are kind of always the two filters that we look at. What is it that fits in with the narrative of the brand? Because it's ultimately this has to be a tool to kind of take forward the narrative of the brand. And the other filter is it relevant to the target audience that you're speaking with? Because not necessarily every would be. I just want to pick up one of the points that Navonil talked about. I think there are kind of, Sudhanshu also mentioned, there are three kind of areas here. There are those things which are going to happen at a point of time. Diwali is going to happen and you can plan for it a year in advance. There are those moments which are going to happen, but you don't know when. Virat Kohli is going to score a century. You just don't know when. For which it's going to be, you can still prepare in advance. Like the outcome that you mentioned, Navonil. But then there are those things that are happening right now, the stuff that goes viral, the duct tape banana, for example. Um, Nobody can anticipate that. And I think depending on what your content calendar is, you will have to kind of create the right structures to kind of support that. So it is, and depending on what your brand's needs are, you will be in different parts of the journey. Not all brands are going to be doing everything.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit more nuance to the aspects that we've been talking about, including what moments to capture.
So I think just to add on to Dilen, I think the way we look at it at Burger King is fundamentally there are three things. I think the first and the foremost is we have defined subcultures, right? We all obviously as marketeers should know our target audience, right? What are the subcultures in which your target audience actually behaving? Like for example, for a Burger King consumer is not so hot on automobile reviews, right? But he or she is keenly interested in memes or reports on Bollywood or on sports. So subcultures have to be clearly identified. That kind of gives you the domain or zone you can play or not play, number one. Number two is something which we call, does your brand have the permission to play in that role, right? Do you actually fit in there? And if so, how? Like for example, everybody does Father's Day, Mother's Day, I don't know, many other, Driver Day, many other days, right? So, and when we did Father's Day, we said, hey, instead of the mushy and the lovable thing which many brands do, for Burger King, we said, hey, Dad, thank you for grilling me, right? You grill me and I become what I am, right? So thank you very much. So it's a permission and the lever with which you could get in. The third thing I think is the single most important thing to my mind is the timing, right? Don't be too late. I mean, you can never time that better, but as much as you can, like the banana duct tape piece of art that you're talking about. By the time my team came to me, I realized there are 10 other brands which have done similar stuff. So I said, it's okay, guys, let it go. It's fine, right?
Oh, wow.
So three things, like I said, know the target audience subcultures. Does your brand have the permission? And number three, it's the timing that matters. So I think that's how we decide if you should go in or not, because there's so many moments to talk in.
Yeah. And religion and politics
And yeah, they are
is a
clear.
no-go.
See, I'll be honest, there are brands which are getting there and are getting talked about. But yeah, I would try and stay away as much as I can. But it's subject to subject, point to point, moment to moment. So that's where I would leave it.
I think just to build on these points, I mean, what we also, the choice of moment is also a function of, can this moment allow the brand to bring a unique point of view? So is it fertile enough for the brand personality to come through in a unique manner? Because, example being, banana. Now there are 100 brands doing the same thing. I mean, consumers don't appreciate that. I mean, it has to be authentic. It has to be something which is unique. So I think a lot of times it's also about creatively, is that moment allowing us the opportunity to show up in our unique and authentic self.
Yeah.
And that's where it's become unique. Otherwise, it's like a Me Too. 100 brands doing, nobody appreciates that.
We spoke about this a little bit earlier when we met, which is, I mean, how do you take moment marketing to the next level? How do you make it live beyond that moment and beyond memes and tweets? I'll start with you, Udit. Where do you think this should go next? Because I mean, it's a cluttered space. Everyone, wants virality, but what beyond that?
Yeah, I think, like absolutely.
Beyond the vanity metrics.
Absolutely. I think, and we've seen some examples in our company where we've been able to like blow it further, right? So there's one way where is absolutely you being proactive and creating the moments yourselves. And I was giving this example of this US NBA player who was retiring. His name is Dwayne Wade. It was a known moment. We knew he was a big, iconic player. And we created, he was a great guy on and off the field. So we created this story of him on his life and his achievements, right? And that became the story that was shown of Dwayne Wade, Dwayne Wade's retirement everywhere. So that 4-minute video that we made, actually that was the video that was shown on CNN, that was shown on like NBA channels, that was shown on obviously, like on the YouTube, on our YouTube channels, right? So we were able to take a moment and hijack it and make it our own in a sense, right? So I think that's one way in which brands can go one further and make moments their own, right? So that's definitely one. I think the second is just like being able to jump on moments when something like lands it in your sort of like arms, you take it like full throttle. So I'll give an example. In Bud Light in the US, there was this thing called Dilly Dilly. So we created like almost like this, you know, it was a nonsensical thing, but like became like a call to action to anything fun. And at some point, there was an American football game that was going on, and one of the players, he played for the one of the Philadelphia teams, and he actually said Philly, Philly. And that went viral. And the brand then latched on that idea of Philly, Philly, and said that if Philly won the Super Bowl that year, they would give free beer to the whole city of Philadelphia. Right? So it's like, the point is, sometimes things land in your lap, but how do you like then blow them? You have the team in place, have the, you know, like the resources in place to be able to blow them up in very short times. I think that's where moment marketing needs to go beyond just like a you know, like a funny, smart reaction to an event that's happening. Yeah.
Navonil, you felt strongly about this during our earlier discussion, right?
No, I mean, when Amul did it, it all started off with awareness and salience. But today, look at what happens to all of us when we enter a mall. It happens to me all the time when I get into Palladium. All kinds of brands messages started coming to me. That there's a Cilio discount, there's a Cilio discount, and there's something else which is going on, which is geotagging. I mean, that to me is also moment marketing. So they're driving footfalls to the store with that, you know. And that's not. This is just one example. There are many other examples. You can drive brand preference through it also. I mean, yes, the Rahul Bose banana moment was absolutely everybody used it, but two brands to me stood out, and for different reasons. One, to me, in a way, drove brand preference, because the competition brand in this case was Marriott, which came up with that terrible experience. And Taj just put up a 10 card, said, boss, if you want seasonal fresh fruits, just ask, we'll send it with our compliments. That's all. And it did in a very Taj way. To me, that drives brand preference at that point of time. You know, two, there is a brand called Misguided, you know, which was part of a show called Love Island. Now, Love Island, think like any show, like a Big Boss, where people come in, they wear some fancy stuff, and whatever, let's say a celebrity or a model or whatever, let's say a friend's character is wearing, and they have app notifications and app pushes, and they pushing you ads through that, and you can buy it off the shelf. So from desire to purchase, that's the next level of moment marketing, whether it's creating preference, whether it's guiding traffic, whether it's driving footfalls, creating preference and latching on to that desire, and then immediately the buy button also. So that's the next level of moment marketing. It's already happening.
Anyone else want to sort of, Dilen, you have a few
Yeah,
want to say
no,
something?
you know, I kind of want to build off what Shri and Udit was saying, that to me, the next level has to be, I think, a little two aspects. One is what I think Durex was the one that did it. You know, when Section 377 got rolled back, they actually didn't put out one tweet; they put out like a campaign. You know, in that 48, 72-hour period. So, and it's because obviously it's a very important part of driving their brand narrative forward. So, to me, that's how do you take moments and then create them to convert them into campaigns. I think is going to be one set of evolution, and the second set of evolution is going to be about how you actually can create moments, because one of the disadvantages of taking a moment is everybody's doing it. You know, and with Lay Smiles, that's what we've been able to do. You know, we actually started off, as Shini said, there's now a day for everything.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there are probably 800 days in 364, you know, the 352 days of the calendar year. We picked World Smiles Day because that was relevant to us. But what was more important was how you went around doing it. You know, we did it in a proprietary way. Focused on influencers, focused on the brand love aspect to it, and the results were really phenomenal. And then the virality of that, I mean, 3 months into the campaign now, we're still getting like 60 posts up on Instagram every single day. So there is a merit in, you know, not always needing to look at what's happening around us. There might be merit in actually creating moments which can actually serve the brand narrative much more.
Which is what you were saying, right? That creating your moments as well as then owning moments.
Yeah.
Now, so we mentioned vanity metrics briefly. What are you using right now? How are you measuring the effectiveness of all these sort of tidbits of work that's happening across platforms? And what more do you want? What more do you need to take it to the next level that we spoke of?
I think the metrics, I mean, in the digital space, The metrics are much more clearer. Srini mentioned this, and I completely agree. Speed is number one. Like, how fast off the block are you? If you're like, the news is broken and you're like 6 hours or 7 hours in, you're late. So speed, I think, is one metric that you definitely want to look at. The second metric that you want to look at is engagement, brand engagement. How many people are commenting, sharing, liking, so on and so forth. Pretty standard metrics.
Yeah.
The third metric that you would want to look at is quality of engagement. How much of that engagement actually consists of people sharing or commenting. And these are all stuff that you can get benchmarks of now, right? And the fourth one is obviously earned media value and earned engagement. How much is the communication that's going to get picked up around this? So those, I think, are
We
the
cover
four.
some of it in brand equity.
Yeah,
That should
of course, with added weight. But those are kind of the four metrics that we kind of tend to look at. Are you fast enough? Are consumers engaging? Is the quality of engagement high? And are you getting more earned media value out of it? That's kind of the simplistic way in which we are looking at right now. There are obviously going to be other ones specific to specific campaigns as you evolve. But these are the four ones I think would be common across.
So at AB InBev, what we've started to do is, we've set targets on a certain amount of reach that needs to come from earned media, right? So like ensuring that it's set in the targets. More marketing is bucketed within a broader, like sort of like this thing of earned media activations that we do, but we have targets on reach on earned media now, right? So it's just like ensuring. I think that's another metric that we've started to like very actively track, and it's significant. Like for example, in advice I can share, we are targeting almost 20% of our reach in India to come from just earned media, right? So it's just again, like with that point of like going away from interrupt marketing to attention marketing. I think it's an essential part of a strategy there.
I think just to add, one of the things which we are now beginning to track, in addition to these funnel metrics, is the sentiment. So, so a lot of times there are a lot of mentions, but what's the broad sentiment? And, so there's a lot of social listening tools which are coming up, and we are dabbling with it. So it's about saying, whether the sentiment was positive, negative, etc., and how does your campaigns really impact the positive and the negative sentiment. So that's an interesting addition which we at Mondelez are trying to now build muscle on. And it's important one, because a lot of times when you do stuff, there is a lot of people who are, in some provocative campaigns, there's negative sentiment which also comes up, which you need to manage, at least keep a watch on. So that's one. I think the piece which I struggle with personally, a lot of these initiatives, while we have metrics like reach, etc., how does it drive business? And maybe in e-commerce, which is a small part of the business, you still have those funnel metrics available. But really from a online to offline, what's the connection? And we do so much stuff. So what's the impact of that particular activity is difficult to isolate.
The
So that's
missing piece.
that's the challenge. But yeah, it's not a perfect science. It's a art and science.
Actually, I have a build on that. The way we've started thinking about it is that this is one of the ways in which you're building frequency. So you can potentially move you would not ideally question the need for frequency on brand communication, especially in impulse categories like ours. We feel that this is a more effective way to build frequency. So it's easier to kind of at least attribute media value to it. And that, I think, is a good starting point, because if you can start attributing some media value, then we kind of have enough faith in media to be able to say that, oh yeah, media justifies itself. So I think the trick for me is converting all of that into media value, and that helps justify some of the investment that will be required.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, just to add on to everybody, I think the only one metric that I track and I hold my teams and the agency partners responsible is the earned media. How many free impressions or eyeballs has this movement of marketing effort of yours has gone in, right? Has got us, right? That to me is the single biggest thing. Because you would not promote a social post which is moment of marketing, right? That breaks the whole purpose, right? If I'm doing something which is topical and to the point and highly relevant, I would not promote that tweet, right? There's no additional media money going in. So for me, the single biggest thing is how much did it travel fundamentally? That to me is the metric that I would always firstly look at.
Yeah, fair enough. Sure.
Two bits to
Yeah.
this. Yeah. First of all of this, I mean, starts with like with any general communication also. What is the objective of that communication? I mean, if that objective is engagement, great. If that objective is preference, great. Or is it, like I said, driving store traffic, or is it purchase? Now, depending on that, the metrics are available in today's world, you know? So that to me is the foremost thing. What is your objective for that thing? It's not just a moment, oh, let's be a part of this conversation. In fact, that's how it happens.
Very often that
Chandrayaan
happens,
2 is
right?
happening.
It's just about being part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that's the way it happens. But like Chandrayaan 2 happening, 2,000 brands, 2,000 brands are taking part in Chandrayaan 2. I mean, that's not, I mean, while you're taking part in the moment, it's best to put some objective to why you're doing it also, apart from just taking part in the moment, you know? That's one. And the other thing which will open a Pandora's box, I'm sure, from an agency point of view, another important metrics which I don't mind admitting, frankly, is the award metrics. Of course, because this kind of stuff is always interesting stuff, great work. So therefore, room for fame and all that, which is, of course, a very selfish kind of a metrics. But yeah, that also operates within the agency.
So you mentioned negative sentiment. We've seen past recent history is littered with examples of moment marketing, moments backfiring on brands. What happens after that? How do you prepare for something like that? Who would like to take this?
Why not? I think and we had this discussion actually, with a bunch of marketeers who face this, and we are doing it in context of, well, I'm not going to name the brand, but I think if you dig down, the real issue is when you lose control of the narrative, right?
And that happens, online. I mean, it's...
Yeah, and that happens if you don't anticipate. That's the point. If you think about it, there will always be people out there who will. Moment marketing is essentially, and all marketing, I think, now is moving towards a point of view. We are being pushed to that, right? Consumers demand, are not okay with just this plastic kind of, commitment to things.
Yeah,
So so with authenticity and point of view, we'll have counterpoint of view, and there are two parts to this. I think and Nike did it really well when they picked up Kaepernick for that campaign. They actually prepared. They were anticipating what was going to happen, and they had a response ready for it. So I think that's number one. Anticipate. Second, I think is if you've genuinely made a mistake, apologize. I think was you know that because the short attention spans work both ways, right? So I think that would be the second thing to do. And the third thing is to genuinely anticipate that a point of view will generate at least 25 to 30. So in my mind, and this is not a scientific number, it's just a rule of thumb. In my mind, if you're about 30% negative comments on something which has a very strong point of view, Section 377, for example, you're still fine. Because that still means that in the net sentiment score that Sudhanshu spoke about, you kind of are still in the positive. And what's more important is that you've been authentic in that period of time. So even if 30% people don't agree with you at any point of time, it's fine. It's when that number is reversed is when you really need to kind of pay attention. It's a simplistic way of looking at it right now. I think we've not fallen into many of those situations ourselves. But the simplistic way I think about it is anticipate, expect that there'll be some negativity if you have a point of view on something that is, well, anything. And the third is if there's genuinely something that you have missed, we're all human, then apologize. It'll come across as authentic.
Yeah, just say sorry. So, Srini, I mean, we spoke about the Megxit example, for instance. There was a lot of hate for some of that work. Can you tell us how Burger King deals with that? I mean, and Burger King is very, for lack of a better word, an opinionated brand. So how do you deal with some of the backlash that might come your way when you launch into these moment marketing initiatives?
I think not just for Burger King. I think for every brand who is in this zone needs to know where your needle is, right? To what level are you pushing the edge, right? It's perfectly fine for a brand to decide, hey, I'm going to be midway, I will do one or two in a whole month, and then we'll keep building as it goes. And there are brands like Burger King which genuinely, as part of the brand DNA and color, want to push the edge because we want to be opinionated, we want to be authentic, because that's how my consumers are, right? I deal with 18-year-old, 20-year-old kids who are as is, right? I mean, they tell you as what they think. There are no filters when they talk to you as a brand or as a consumer, right? So as a brand, that's the choice I've made, right? Number one. To answer your question, I think we wear that bit of risk hat when we get into the room, when we deal with this, so we know some of this can come there. We have very clear guardrails. I think what we are more clear are those 4 or 5 things which are an absolute no-no, right? That's the starting point, right? When I say guardrails, absolutely be clear. What are those 4 or 5 things you really don't want to go, right? Rest is open. The second thing that we do is, I don't know if that percentage is 30 or more in our industry or in the case of my brand, but there will always be that bit of a negative thing to an edgy post. But what is important is, did you hit it out of the park for your core audience, right? What is important is, your core loyalists, did they really absolutely fell in love with the kind of work that you've done, right? There will be that bit of 20-30% who haven't loved, so am I really hitting the bullseye? And third really is, like you say, you measure, you improve as you go. I mean, you see sometimes daily, you see sometimes weekly. One of the things I keep sharing with my teams, and most of us work in consumer companies, is first thing that most of us are trained over the years to do is you walk into office, you look at the sales data from yesterday, right? I've always encouraged my team, please do that, but also look at the conversations and the buzz that happened in your category online or with your consumer, right? Then you're closer and you know what to do, what not to do. So these are the 3 things, just a guardrail as you go into this. Yeah.
Navonil, you would like to
Just
add
a
something?
spin to this adversity thing. One is if something goes wrong, how we do. Sometimes adversity itself can be a great trigger for moment marketing. When the floods happened and what SL did with that boat and that life buoy which saved, you can use it as a boat. That's great adversity marketing. I mean, the other thing, one
They're
famous
calling
example.
it adversity marketing.
Yeah, I mean, you can call it adversity marketing, but it's also moment marketing. It's reacting to what happened in Bombay at that point of time. In New York City, these things happen even in New York. There was smoke coming out of a manhole, and guess which brand took advantage of that? I mean, you can call it adversity. That smoke wouldn't have smelt nice or whatever. But anyway, there was Folgers Coffee, a brand. They printed a manhole cover, which is like a steaming cup of coffee, and steaming because the smoke was coming up. Now that's the other way. That's the other side of it. Even when something probably which is not right is going on, how can you leverage that? I mean, I wanted to play the other side of the thing. When things go wrong, yes, you have no better choice than to apologize. But when things go wrong, also could be a moment in itself for you to capitalize on.
How much freedom do you give your agency teams and in-house teams to leverage, moments in culture, events, news? I mean, what do you tell them? I mean, how much freedom do they have essentially? Udit, would you like to take Srini anyway?
Yeah.
So in InBev, what you've done is we've created an in-house creative team. We call it Draftline.
Call it?
Draftline.
Okay.
From the idea of draft beer. And moment marketing really is in-house in that sense, right? So they sit next to us. So they're on the rolls of the company, right? So I think that's one way in which we've
Control.
created speed, but also control, right? So and it's worked for us up till now. A lot of the ideas that, for example, the Didi idea that I was talking to you about came actually or was built from the Draftline team, right? So, but absolutely, you make mistakes and then you learn from them. But I think that's how we are figuring how to sort of cater to this. Yeah.
I think in our case, what we have been discussing, it's very important that the team which is working on the brand understands the brand core very well. It understands what the brand stands for, what the brand promise, what's the brand personality, what's the voice of the brand. And once you have that kind of a sharp understanding, which is thankfully the case in our brands, I think we have spent a lot of energies in defining it in a very sharp manner and also setting the guardrails well. So what will we do and what will we not do? kind of setting that guardrail is the starting point. If you have a strong piece of thinking on paper, documented, and if the team which is working on your brand understand that, then I think you can trust and you can let the creative take lead. Then the process of, you need to be agile, you need to be fearless, you need to be bold to cut the clutter. So I think that's the journey. We are trying from a very conventional marketeers to now adapt into this new reality. We are also moving forward, but I think the way we think about is spend time on getting the brand fundamental rights and make sure that everyone understands that, and then let the team take a flight and be open to mistakes as well. But yeah, mistakes should be small enough. It shouldn't do heavy damage. So that's the kind of conundrum, but that's how we are thinking about it and approaching it.
Yeah, so I don't think any brand that does good moment marketing can do without flexibility and removing the bureaucratic layers of approval. It is not possible in that setup. I'm very sure. So to Sudhanshu's point of conventional marketing, you can't build animatics and do link tests and hence and do this, right? By the time the story is over, right? I think what worked in my experience with the way we ran Burger King and social media is you need to find one superstar in your team who thinks, who breathes, who lives in that world, right? The kind of trends that come up, the kind of stuff that you see, a lot of times I struggle. There's something which was trending yesterday, which is about art and artist. I still have no clue what that whole art, I just saw it before sleeping yesterday, and I'm sure the guy, that superstar in my
You need
team
a
has
millennial
is
or
a,
Gen Zer to translate
absolutely.
that for you.
So it's not just an age. It's I think it's a mindset and the
Sure,
way
yeah,
they have, right? So I think the way it worked for me, I need that one superstar who can write this beautifully and belongs there, right? And I don't burden him with sales pressures. I don't burden him with the brand equity wheel and stuff like that. So I'll let him be, right? So that's something which has worked. And of course, you need a solid agency partner who's tracking buzz, who's tracking trends, micro movements, because there's many opportunities through the day.
Yeah.
So just this.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's our cue.
I think agency freedom is a bit of a myth, in my view. I think
Agency freedom is a
it's
bit of a
myth
myth.
in this space, because what you do is essentially all of the stuff like the briefing and or all of that stuff, you kind of pre-do it. So the tonality, the brief, everything is set up beforehand. So you don't end up actually spending that time in the moment itself. None of those steps which are required for great creative go away, in my view. They just get crunched or pre-done so that you still have great creative output, right? So that's...
Sorry, I just want to add. I know we're running out. For us, I think very important point is, when you work on a campaign, sometimes it takes months, even years, as some of my friends will, to get something that the pangs that go with creation that, when it comes to moment marketing, it's instant. It will be get out right now. There is an adrenaline rush in the here and now. And that's something you can't put a filter on that. As an agency person, we don't that's down to individual drive and all of that, because it's all about the here and now. It's all about the adrenaline rush and getting it down. So I think we allow all kinds of freedom for that because that's the best thing. You're scripting for something which is the most unscripted drama called life. And there cannot be a more heady rush than that. So full freedom from an agency point of view to work on it. Of course, clients will put in their filters, but we go all out for that.
See, there was a debate.
Fair enough. I know maybe we should have started at this one, right? But thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. It was interesting. I think we got a few very interesting insights into how these things happen and the planning, the machinery that's required. Thank you so much again. And look forward to the awards later. There might be some moment marketing in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.